Everyone is creative.
A creative life requires
bravery and action,
honesty and hard work.
We're here to support and celebrate.
And encourage you to make the things that you love.
We believe in the power of community.
We believe in giving a damn.
We believe in face-to-face connections,
in learning from others,
in hugs,
and high fives.
We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose,
confident they will inspire one another,
and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world.
Everyone.
Everyone is welcome.
Today's theme is Nomad, and this was chosen by our Ulaanbaatar chapter in Mongolia, and this is illustrated by Oyuna Bold. All right, I have a few words to read about this. Some people feel compelled to travel from place to place, to live outside the confines and constraints of a permanent address. Others have no choice but to leave home in search of a better life. A nomad embraces discomfort, welcomes the unknown, and sees every detour as a new adventure. Have you heard the call of the open road? Yeah? Ever dream of being a digital nomad, working from exotic locals and crossing borders and time zones to discover fresh inspiration and share worthy views? But following your nomadic spirit doesn't require collecting stamps in your passport. The act of creating is its own journey. So meander through your ideas, roam between different styles. The most important thing is to take the first step. It doesn't matter where it leads, because the joy is suddenly finding yourself somewhere unexpected. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you. All right, time for Parv to shut up and for Sade to come on up to take it away.
Thank you so much. How's everyone's morning going so far? Just gonna move this over to the side. Going good so far? That's awesome. For the longest time in my living room, I had this frame that you see here that says, "Not all who wander are lost." I got it from HomeSense. I don't know if anyone knows HomeSense. I love HomeSense. I'm one of those people that I would walk into HomeSense and just like pick different things. So this was on clearance, and it was a little bit dingy. It's like made from wood, but it looked like it had seen better days. Like someone probably had it in their home, probably stepped on it a few times and then took it back to HomeSense. I'm kidding. But anyways, it was on clearance, and I was like, oh my gosh, this speaks to me in this moment of my life. I had just moved to Vancouver, and I felt like this was a new season of my life, and it resonated with my feeling at the time of feeling like I was exploring a new side of myself in this new space and not knowing what was going to come, and that feeling of wondering if that makes me unsure of myself, unsure of my purpose, unsure of my identity. And it just resonated with it so well. I wanted to encourage anyone who, and that's also me at Joffrey Lake, for anyone who's been to Joffrey Lake. So beautiful. And just an encouragement to keep wandering, to keep exploring, to keep crossing through the boundaries of your mind and being the best that you can be. So today I'm going to be talking about finding home between science and the soul. Nomad's frequency. And it's like, wait, what? And I know sometimes people, anyways, we'll get into it and why I sort of decided to go with that route as my conversation today. Next slide. One of the first questions that people get, or at least used to get, I'll say probably one of the first ones you get when you're being introduced to someone or when you're meeting someone for the first time is you introduce yourselves, you ask each other what your names are. And probably this follow-up question after that usually is where you're from, or maybe your name creates a form of intrigue. Like for me, when people meet me for the first time, most times people are like, "Were you named after Sade Awele?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I was not." It is just a Nigerian name and a very popular Nigerian name. But these are the things that sort of anchor people to make a sense of who we are before we start going into our interests and creating some levels of commonality. And this is very interesting with the perspective of being a nomad, because then it sort of brings this question of like, well, where am I from and what do I relate with? And is my identity tied to a specific geographic location, or is it tied to more of who I am and who I'm evolving to be? I'll talk about my roots for a little bit. I was born in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, and fun fact, apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but my mother said that on the Labor Day, apparently I was almost dropped in the hospital because the delivery, or my brother's delivery, my immediate brother, took about 2 days. So the doctors were convinced that, yeah, this is gonna take a while, so just take your time, have some tea, walk around. And the next thing, she went to use the washroom, and apparently my head was starting to come out, if you know what I mean. So then it became this moment of shock, and everyone was trying to, get things together, and then poof, they almost dropped me, but then I was fine, thank God. But it's interesting because we always joke that I was just ready to just come into the world and see what it had to offer me. And Nigeria has shaped the way that I see the world. Nigeria was, for the longest time, what I knew and understood before, of course, immigrating to Canada with my family. And it formed my sense of identity. There's a famous saying in Nigeria, or if you've met a Nigerian before, that the saying is Naija no dey carry last, which basically means that Nigerians are always very ahead of the curve, always thinking outside of their boundaries, because there's a major disparity between the rich and the poor, the affluent and the not so affluent. But now we're starting to see a change in that, where the middle class is starting to evolve with the rise of social media and other ways that you can earn an income. And that's from that creative way of thinking outside of the box of how to make a life and a living for themselves. And I remember one of the famous sayings that people used to say to me and my family before we moved to Canada was, don't forget where you're from. Don't forget where you're from. And it's like, oh, very interesting, and how that plays a role in the way that I create and the way that I see myself today. Next slide. So I was raised by two loving parents, two different cultures, one culture being Igbo, the other culture being Yoruba, and both of those cultures are very, very, very strong in the way that they see life, in the way that they see culture, in the way that they view family. And considering my parents were actually married in the 80s, that was actually a time where it was a lot harder for people from two different cultures to sort of merge together to create this synergistic life and experience together and marriage. And they actually met outside of Nigeria in Manchester, where they were both going to school. And it was interesting because they both came from very different backgrounds that brought them into this space of being together. And then when we were growing up, I remember having a dream when I was a lot younger that we were going to move, that there was going to be this major move that happened in our family. And I just never thought much about it until, of course, coming to Canada. And that's a photo of me and my mom when I was a kid, and then that one, I'm the kid smiling with the little red flower on my head on the slide. That was one of my favorite things to do, go on slides. And next slide. So coming from a very strong, influential family that was very big on culture, faith, music, very big on how we saw family. It sometimes felt like my path was already set for me, and it sometimes felt like I needed to break away from that to get an understanding of who I was meant to be. This is actually a picture of me performing in Nigeria with my little afro on the side. So music was always a part of my life, like even from very, very, very young. I remember my father was actually the first person who pointed that out to me, saying, "Do you know that you can sing?" And I had no idea at the time, but it felt like my life was already set for me, because we're very big on, well, used to be. Things are a little different now, but at the time, my family was very particular about you either become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or you go into finance. I don't know if anyone kind of can relate to that kind of experience, but that was what I was coming from. And I remember thinking, well, how do I find my voice in all of this? Because I had all these different creative interests. I was performing in school, and I was acting, and I was writing books, and I was tapping into all of my creative explorations, and I didn't want to be constrained. So it was a real challenge for me. And I kept thinking, okay, how do I find this sense, how do I explain to my parents that this is a viable thing if I pursue the arts? Because especially at that time in Nigeria, it was definitely different from the way it is now, where you can actually see the trajectory and the rise of the creatives, and whether it's in music, whether it's in culinary arts, like you can actually see people earning a living from that in Nigeria now compared to then. There was no clear path. So for them, it was like, well, how is she going to make a living? So for them, it was a sense of concern, and they wanted to have this safety buffer. So I was like, okay, maybe I could do architecture. And it was a back and forth for a long time. Okay, maybe what about interior design? Okay, well, what about I don't know, fashion design. Like we were going back and forth for a while trying to find what I would study. So I ended up actually applying for architecture. I thought I was going to go in for architecture, and then I got an email or a letter from the dean. I remember saying, hey, we've gotten your application, so and so. What if you consider engineering? And I was like, oh, well, I wanted to do architecture. Like I thought I was going to, go into the design route, kind of a thing. And then I was like, okay, well, what's the closest engineering program where I can still work with architects, like civil engineering? Okay, sure, why not? And that's literally how I got there. But it was interesting because I didn't know what that journey was going to lead me to, because in the process of doing that, I actually ended up meeting a lot of incredible, we can go to the next slide, sorry, I've been stuck on this one, sorry. Moving to Canada was sort of that aspect of it, and I met a lot of incredible people in my program that made me realize that I didn't have to choose. I saw a lot of people who were incredible, incredible musicians who were pursuing their own unconventional ways of creating, of making art for themselves and making a life for themselves. But of course, at this time, I was still very conflicted because I had these two very, very distinct and very, very different paths. And I was trying to make sense of all of it and who I was in all of this. So we can go to the next one. And for me, being a nomad isn't about the geography, it's about the emotional and spiritual movement we go through as we search for belonging. And I think for me, I was experiencing a lot of complexities. First, the complexity of moving into Canada as a teenager and trying to find my sense of who am I in this space? How can I create in this space? How can I be authentic to myself in this space? And then learning about the history of the land also made it even more complex for me, trying to make a sense of, okay, how do I fit in this space that's very complex, that has a history, that has caused a lot of pain, and moving forward in this space, and then also recognizing, okay, this was the first time that I could visibly see how Black I was when I walked across a room or whenever I was in any space, just by virtue of the questions and the conversations that would come up from people saying, oh, let's have always questions about the hair, of course, questions about how I speak and so on. And so it sort of, I was having a hard time piecing my puzzle together. And the longer I spent in Canada, I became less, I wasn't Nigerian enough all of a sudden, and I wasn't Canadian enough all of a sudden, because in both of those spaces, I was trying to make sense of my identity. And the only thing that seemed to fit in any space was my music. It was like the one thing that kept grounding me, because at least with music, I could combine my cultures, I could combine my interests, I could combine all of my identity into this synergic space and not have to worry about people questioning it, and just more of embracing it and coming with me on that journey. And that's sort of how I try to live creatively, having that open mind to receive. And next slide. But I was still faced with this pressure to choose. And a lot of people, especially earlier on in my career, I would have people come up to me and be like, well, you have to pick one. You have to pick a path. Like, you're either going to be an engineer or you're going to be a singer. Like, you've got to make a decision. And I remember I was trying to find a mentor, and I couldn't find any mentors or people who would, talk to me about my journey, about my life. So eventually I found someone. We sat down, we went out for breakfast. And here I was thinking, oh, this was gonna be an amazing transformative experience. Like, he's gonna tell me about how I can, transform my life and all the ways that I can grow as an artist, as a creative, as an engineer, all these different things. And nope, it was very much focused on, you have to choose. You have to make a decision. You are either going to follow this path or that path. And I felt so heartbroken. And I also had a little bit of empathy, because I realized that it was the limitation of his mind. He could only see me in a certain light based on his level of understanding. And because of that, he could not, I realized in that moment that he was not the right person to take me to where my life's journey was supposed to go. because he could only understand based on his limited view of how he sees the world. And I was like, you know what, that's your journey, that's your choice. I just took that as a lesson that, you know what, not everyone can come to this journey with me. Not everyone can come on this path with me because of how unique it is. I have to make sure that I'm listening to my inner voice and listening to what's true to me. So I just said, thank you very much. And that was the end of that mentorship session. And I kept on going on the journey of discovering who I was and who I was meant to be. Okay, got the next one. And then that began the moment where science and soul started to collide, because I realized, okay, fine, I have all these interests. As some people say, I use my left brain, I use my right brain. How do I make sense of this in this world? I love music. I never want to stop singing. I never want to stop performing. I also love problem solving. Okay, I also love project management. How do I make sense of my existence? How do I connect with people? How do I have conversations? Like, how do I let people, or how do people take me seriously in this type of world that I'm living in? So I was like, okay, I have to be true and honest with myself. I have to live unapologetically and tap into those interests and combine those interests as best as I can. So I was like, okay, cool. We're gonna start releasing music. All right. So then I remember I sat my parents down and I was like, hey, guess what? I'm gonna start putting out my own music. And my dad was like, well, okay, I probably saw this coming because you've been putting things out anyway, so support you. It was better than that. It was a better conversation than that. I'm just making it a little more goofy. But they were a little bit afraid because they weren't sure how people would see me, but at the same time, they were like, you go for it and you do what makes you happy. You do what makes you feel fulfilled. So then I started putting out music, started getting better at it, started studying, and trying to improve on how I worked on my art. And then another thing I realized was there was it felt a little bit isolating because at the same time while working on the music, I realized that there wasn't a lot of people that I could turn to for advice, and a lot of people were instead asking me questions, and it felt a little bit isolating at the start, trying to find this path for myself as an artist. But luckily for me, I didn't stop, I didn't quit, kept working on music, kept improving on the skills, kept networking with people, and at the same time, also just trying new things. And that led to me meeting this incredible music director. Her name is Bruna, and she's a music video director, and she's a film director as well. And we were having this conversation, and I was telling her about this project I was working on called Intuition. And I was telling her about how I felt that this speaks really true to myself and true to my life, following my intuition, following my calling. And I wanted to display this in a music video in a very unconventional way, and I wanted to apply for film festivals and to show this at film festivals. And I had no idea if this was actually going to happen or not. I was just having an open mind to see where this would lead us. So then we started working on the music video, and she believed in the project, and she and an amazing group of people believed in the project. We worked on this video for 2 days, for probably about, I want to say around 16 hours each day. And then we submitted it to film festivals. And then the waiting game began, and I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And of course, well, not of course, because we had no idea, but we got into the Atlanta Film Festival, Paris Short Film Festival, and Toronto Short Film Festival. And basically what that essentially means was the music video was shown at these festivals. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is a surreal experience. And what is amazing is once you open up your mind to the possibilities of what you can accomplish, it's almost like you start vibrating on a different frequency, and it's almost like you're starting to open up your heart to what else you can receive in that moment. And so in that same frequency, in that same vein, we also got into a festival to perform at, all the way in Europe. And I was like, okay, I don't know how this is supposed to happen. This is taking Nomadic experience to the next level. Like, how am I supposed to afford this? How am I was just like feeling very, very overwhelmed that in the span of literally months, the plan was to go to Atlanta, then go to Toronto, then go to Europe. And then shortly after that, I think we also ended up going to New York as well, getting an opportunity there as well. So I was like, okay, how do I make sense of this? I want to do this all. I just know that I am going to do this all. Like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to figure it out. And I remember it was like brainstorming with the band. And of course, that's where the left brain started to come in and be like, okay, how do we make this work? Because this is going to be the most incredible experience. And I want to meet all these people and I want to have these experiences. And so when we made this poster that you see over here, the tour, I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen yet, but we're going to keep putting this out there and we're going to keep putting it into the universe and see how it unfolds. And it really did. It really, really did. And it was incredible. That photo up there was the performance, one of the performances in Europe. And the photo at the bottom was from the music video and the festivals that it was filmed at. And I think at the top right is one of the private screenings of the music video. You can go to the next slide. So when science and soul collide, at least in my experience, it was finally the moment where I broke the boundaries of conventional thinking for myself. And I told myself, no more will I constrict my mind to what other people perceive of how I should live or how I should be. It tells a story. It tells a story that is deeper than just what you see, because it's deeper and it's related to the heart, and it gives life a deeper meaning, it gives life a deeper essence. And this is a cover of the EP Intuition. Next slide, please. So the moment of integration for me, it took a while. It took those life experiences for me to realize, wow, life is so much more full and life is so much more beautiful when you open up your mind to what you can do. When you open up your mind and you stop limiting yourself and limiting the possibilities, when you get curious, when you start asking questions, you realize that the more you do that, the more you will be connected to people who are like-minded, and the more you won't feel like you have to hide sides of yourself or parts of who you are. And yes, does that make people a little bit unsure because they can't put you in a box? Yeah, maybe sometimes. But that's what life is all about. That's what makes us unique. What makes us unique is what we bring, what we offer to the world. Because there's someone else out there on the other side of this who's waiting to see how your story can influence them, how your story, how you create, how you make sense of this world can allow them to make sense of this world. Because you choosing to say yes in difficult situations, and you choosing to say yes and have this experience, whirlwind experience of life, is going to inspire someone else one day to do the same thing, to tap into that unknown. So the moment of integration was when I said, I'm going to stop running from who I am. I'm going to stop being afraid. I'm going to stop acting like this is, I actually at one point thought it was a bad thing, that I had these two very distinct interests. I was like, no, there must be something wrong with me. And it's later, of course, with seeing how life unfolded from this, that made me realize that no, this is a gift. It is a gift to be able to have such a beautiful, rich life experience. And then next slide. And so with that, music being my home and music being the thing that gels my life together, it has allowed me to have so many beautiful experiences, whether it's meeting people in Europe and having conversations and just jamming at a random bar, to working and having the most incredible interviews where I get to talk about my life and story. That was, I think, a picture from the film festival, Toronto Film Festival. It just allowed me to realize that music is not, because music is an intangible thing, it's something that you feel on the inside. That sort of resonates with home necessarily not always having to be a physical place. It's the place that you feel most at rest. The place that you feel most at home is a place that allows you to wander and allows you to continue to create. And music has been that constant thing in my life. In the next slide. And the lessons that I've learned from the road as well is that belonging can happen anywhere. I've met strangers who felt like family and we've stayed connected for years. I have, through it all, learned that this movement is part of my story. It's not a detour, it's the main road. And becoming a nomad also means learning to trust the unfamiliar, learning to trust the things that feel uneasy, and learning to trust the path, trust your journey, and trust your gut that it's all gonna work out. Next slide. And so Afro Soul, that brings me into Afro Soul, which is my identity in motion, so to speak, because it is finally that place where I create that combines my culture, my heritage, my story, the places that I have been able to visit and people that I've been able to meet along the way and hope to continue to meet along the way that have inspired how I write and inspired the way that I think. Next slide. And so today, I no longer see this in-betweenness as a limitation. I see it now as an opportunity and an invitation to also allow people to express themselves outside of what society has essentially told them should be their confined way of thinking. I see this as more of a way to expand our minds to what is possible and to what we can achieve together and make sense of the world in a more beautiful and a more unique way. I've learned that this is a superpower. Having that uniqueness is our superpower. The things that we do that feel like, oh, well, this is kind of weird, yeah, do it. The things that you feel like, oh, this is not the conventional way of creating, create it. Because those are the magical moments where life starts to have a deeper meaning. Those are the magical moments where people look and are inspired by what you bring to the table. Purpose isn't something you find once. It's something that you shape over time through your life experiences. It's something that as a nomad, I'm collecting pieces of the world, but I also now know how to give pieces of myself to it as well. Next slide. Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Was that inspiring? Very nice. Okay, now, one cool thing about today is that I think we've done it like twice or thrice in our history where the musician was also the speaker, so it's pretty cool. Now, turn your chairs around in a group of, I don't know, 3, 4, and let's talk. Let's see what was cool to us today. Once again, thank you to our support partners, Side Door, and everybody else. Oh, and one more thing. Where did David go? Come on up, present this to Sade. Yeah. And thank you to Emmeline Lai. Is Emmeline here? Oh my God, this is so beautiful. Thank you for working on that. And now, we're gonna do Q&A. Who's ready? Oh, wow. Sade, you wanna come on up? I'll be running around with the mic. This is yours.
Hi, everyone. Don't be shy.
Okay, Sasha, not Anna.
Hi. First of all, I loved your speech. It was super inspiring, and
Thank you.
I had a lot of things I connected with. I wanted to ask, how did you tangibly mix the music career and your civil engineering career? Could you tell us a bit about, the jobs you had and how you actually managed that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was a very practical thing where I was literally working and also performing, but not side by side. So I had to recognize that I had needed to create a schedule for myself in a practical sense, one where I'm able to focus on my creativity side and one where I'm able to focus on my profession. So working time is working time and music time is music time. I always joke that it's a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9, and then my weekends pretty much dedicated to going to the studio, performing, different places, whether it's in the city or outside of the city. And then when it came to touring, that's a little bit different. For touring, I actually had to take time away from working to tour because, of course, that requires a lot more time and a lot more commitment. So yeah, that's sort of how I try to balance that out, just recognizing that giving each its undivided attention in the times that I'm spending working on it. And then I just found that naturally also the creativity that I would get from music, I was starting to also apply that in my workspace more in an abstract way, in the way that I communicated with people, and the way that I showed up to spaces. Yeah.
Oh, any other questions from the audience?
I liked hearing about how you listen to both sides of your brain. I am very curious, how did you find the courage and the clarity not to listen to that mentor when they had bad advice for you?
That's such a good one. You know, fun fact, that day, after I had the meeting with the mentor, my car got towed. I was like, this is a bad sign. I was like, I'm not meeting this person again. But I think it was more paying attention to my intuition. Something about the meeting didn't feel right. Like it felt like I was being asked to shut down a side of myself. And I remember just feeling very quiet in this space as I took it all in. And I started paying attention to myself and seeing, if I have a mentorship session and I'm not leaving feeling empowered and I'm not leaving feeling like I'm ready to take on life's challenges, then something's off here. And it doesn't have to do with me, it has to do with them. So then I literally just decided not to pay attention, even though I was afraid. And I just said, you know what, I'm gonna keep exploring my music, and I'm gonna keep growing in engineering as well, and I'm not going to pay attention to what he's saying because it doesn't feel right. So that it was really more of an intuitive thing, and luckily as a result of doing that, I then eventually found other people who could resonate with that life experience, and that made it more affirming for me as well, because I could partner with them and connect with them, and people who thought in like-minded ways. Yeah.
Hi. I really enjoyed your writing as well as your singing, and I recognize songwriters are writers.
Yes.
But do you write any poetry or anything? Because some of the way that you described what you went through on the screen, in fact, the slides went too fast because I was like reading it away, wondering what else you had to say. But do you do any poetry or writing as well as your songwriting?
Not anymore, no. I used to write short stories, and I haven't tapped into it since then. I would say just only now lyrically through songwriting, but that's such a great question. Maybe I should go back into it.
Yeah, you put things in a really lovely, lovely way.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, sorry, the slides were a lot. I was like, oh no, how am I gonna get through this?
This is just a little simple question, but I loved when you said about you can smell buildings, like how they work. How do you do that? Like what, can you describe to us that experience? Because I'd love to know.
Okay, it's materials in general. I know it's a weird quirk, and I blame my mom for this because she has a strong sense of smell too. So I just smell everything that I want to smell and I don't want to smell. So it's, for example, with wood, it has like a very, I don't know, like what I call it, like almost like a musty smell. Like I can just tell if I'm in a space where there's wood. I can tell if it's older wood versus if it's new wood, because there's just a certain way that I can't describe it. There's a certain way that it smells. I can tell if it's damp as well. And if it's damp, it has a different smell. If it's dusty, it has a different smell. If it's new, it has a different smell. And I can smell metal as well. Like in a space, I can smell when a space has been newly painted, even if I wasn't there when it was painted. But if I walk into space, I know if it's been painted by the smell. What else? Yeah, just different materials. I'm trying to think what other kind of materials I can smell, like insulation. I just know. It's very weird.
Probably
a great question.
You're a real estate flipper's worst night. It's like, give it away. Any other questions? Oh, come in. Okay, where was the hand?
Do you sing in both languages?
Oh, such a good question. I would love to. So I sing in English and in Pidgin English. So Pidgin English is essentially broken English. It's like Nigerian's version of Patois. But other than that, no. But I would love to. I do incorporate aspects of my language, Yoruba language and Igbo language into my music, but slight aspects. Like, for example, when we were performing Joe, there were aspects of that had Yoruba language in it. But it's something that I want to do more of. Yeah.
Hello. You made such a long way to give me a microphone, and I have such a stupid question. Thank you for your talk. It was cool and inspiring.
Thank you.
My question is, when you jump from being a civil engineer to being a songwriter and a singer, do you have any ritual how you go from one side to another side?
Just like a Hannah Montana moment, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I do. I have to take a moment to decompress mentally. So essentially, it really does feel like using different sides of your brain. So I have to allow myself a moment to just relax, do some deep breathing, center myself. Because I do find that if I rush from working and rush straight to a show, I feel very like professional and very like, I'm like, oh no, this isn't. I have to tap into my aura and tap into myself. So I usually will practice deep breathing, remind myself what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and then do a little bit of vocal warm-up. And then once I start doing my makeup, getting ready, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel it, and I play some music, get into the zone, and I'm like, all right, let's go. So it's a little bit of a practice moment for me to kind of ground myself into what I'm about to do. Yeah.
Great. I think that wraps up our questions and listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Have a wonderful day.